1940s, it was one of the worst times in the United States in the beginning of the decades. The United States barely got out the Great Depression at the beginning of the 40s, yet due to an unfortunate series of events, we stumbled into the World War II. Although it did bring many jobs to the guys who were at home and the women, but at what cost of young men, sending overseas for wars? Well, how do these people deal with the wars at home and overseas? Well, that's what I'm here to talk about. The popular culture of the 1940s with soldiers and people at home. First, we will talk about the sport. During the 1940s, many young men were drafted to go to the war, especially baseball players and boxers. First was baseball players. According to the LSC Kingwood Library, that by 1943, half of the baseball players were drafted. And one of these stars was Joe DiMaggio. He was right here. Here's the picture of the Yankees, started and finishing with the Yankees. He left for war, returned after his service, and continued playing baseball. His first career as civilian after the service, he actually hit 25 home runs, which is pretty decent during his age. I think it was about 31, 32 years old. And baseball during that time was so important that President Roosevelt actually signed the Green Light Letter, which support baseball players and create more baseball games to help the morale of the troops and people at home. Japanese think it was so important that the game was so important to the soldiers, they actually tried to jam these broadcasts throughout the radio. And next, not only baseball player, but also boxer as well. There are almost at 4,000 boxers out of 7,500 professional boxers left to join the service. One of the most famous is Joe Louis. He's a reigning heavyweight champion. He's way up here. That's a picture. I think he was running around 1820s when he was 18 or 20 years old. And he was a sergeant. He didn't do much battling during the war, but he gave a lot of exhibition match during that time. He also donated over $100,000 to war relief, which is quite a lot more during that time, since the average salary was about $1,300 a year. Although the sport might lack of talents, they still draw a very big crowd in the beginning in 1943, with approximately 320,000 people visiting the boxing rings and made over $1.13 million. Ballpark was also filled, and same with the racetrack. However, it was changed throughout the war, since there were many more players who were getting drafted and sent overseas. But after the war, there was the biggest breakthrough. It was in 1947 when Jackie Robinson, the first African American player, was drafted by the MLB. He's right there. And the year after that was Satchel Paige, a 42-year-old rookie African American, who was drafted by the Cleveland Indians. The second topic we'll talk about today is movies. It's quite a big deal during that time. Hollywood tried to take advantage of this by producing a large amount of movies, mostly war movies and documentaries. The movies were simple plot and predictable morals. Although it might seem that very many movies were produced, but not very good. But it was still considered the heyday of the movies during that time. As you can see up there, some of the best movies during the 1940s and still considered American classic today. Number one up there you see is Casablanca, was made in 1942, and Guadalcanal Diary, another war movie, in 1983. And finally, who doesn't know about The Wonderful Life? It's a Wonderful Life. It was made in 1946, which we all watched during Christmas. And finally, it's about the music. The music changed pretty significantly from the pre-war to during and after the war. Before the war, they would start with big bands, which you can see right here, for about 10, 15 to 20 people, play different instrument, trumpet, clarinet. And during that time, interviewees showed me that one of the most famous musician during that time was Mr. Duke Ellington and Benny Goodman, who referred to as the king of swing during that time. And during and after the war, musicians tried to write more upbeat music, try to keep people have fun, keep the troops' morale up. So, thus brought forth the advent of bebop. Yeah, it sounds kind of funny, but actually a quite catchy tune. The music can be characterized by complex melodies, chord progression, and definitely some nice new rhythm added to jazz. And they form a smaller group, so you get players more opting for solos. You can see right there, one of the most famous artists during the time was Dizzy. He was one of the best trumpet during the time, and also Charlie Parker, a saxophonist. And also, in order to help the musician during the time to help the troops oversee, they actually toured some of the field hospital. Over there, you can see on the right is Mr. Al Jolson, which is Mr. Mind if you actually saw his performance live, just to help the troops get through the war, the stress, and everything they're dealing with. And the woman on the right here is Miss Frances Langford, which she actually toured field hospital to sing to the wounded soldiers during the time. From the information that I found through my research and interview, I conclude that even though the United States went through some tough time because of the World War II and the Great Depression, we still stay strong with many volunteers from our athletes to serve their country, a racial breakthrough in sports, new music by artists who sacrificed themselves to travel to sea to perform for the troops, and create some of the most famous movies during the time. Turns out, the 1940s was really a decade of triumph, not trouble.